Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at some really neat notes one of you sent in. Ang, who's been doing a bit of experimenting with mint propagation.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Anne was curious about, optimizing gardening techniques and documented it all.
It offers some really practical insights, doesn't it?
Definitely. Real-world gardening observations.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's May 1st, 2025. Ang's at the grocery store and spots these mint cuttings that are, well, unusually large, bigger leaves than you normally see.
Right, which immediately makes you think, okay, is this just standard mint that was, like, left to grow longer? Or maybe a totally different, bigger variety?
Exactly. Have you ever noticed that kind of variation in store-bought herbs? It makes you wonder what causes it.
Well, that size difference.
Mm.
It often comes down to harvest time. Mint picked earlier tends to be smaller, more tender.
Okay.
Let it grow longer, you get bigger leaves, maybe a little tougher sometimes.
Ah.
But it could also be a different cultivar altogether, one that's just naturally larger.
Interesting. So Aang, intrigued by this, decides to propagate them. And they chose the water method.
A classic choice.
Ah,
And Ang noted seeing tiny roots already starting at the nodes.
nodes, right. Can you quickly explain what those are again?
Sure, they're just the points on the stem where leaves branch off, and crucially, where new roots are most likely to sprout.
Gotcha. So seeing roots already there was a good sign.
Oh yeah, definitely gives the cuttings a head start, increases the odds of success quite a bit.
Now, Aang also did something interesting, kept most of the leaves on, didn't really prune them back much. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, that's a bit of a balancing act. Usually you might prune leaves to reduce water loss while the cutting focuses on rooting.
Right.
But if it already has some root development, like Ang's maybe did, those leaves can photosynthesize and potentially fuel faster initial growth.
Ah, so it leverages the existing structure.
Exactly. It's a trade-off. Less water stress versus more energy production early on. Ang's approach suggests leaning towards energy production here.
Okay. Then Aang added rooting hormone, which makes sense, and also a bit of fertilizer to the water. Fertilizer seems early.
Yeah, that's the part that raises an eyebrow. Generally, you hold off on fertilizer in water propagation
Why is that?
because the cutting doesn't have a developed root system yet to actually absorb those nutrients effectively. The priority is roots first. Too many nutrients too soon can actually stress or even burn the cutting.
Okay, that makes sense.
However, because Ang saw those initial tiny roots, maybe, just maybe, a very dilute solution could provide a tiny nudge. It's definitely a more advanced move, requires careful observation. Not something you'd usually recommend right off the bat.
Right. So to test what works best, Aang didn't just use one jar. They set up 3 in different spots around the house.
Smart move, creating different microclimates.
Microclimates. So what does that mean in this context? What factors would be different between, say, a windowsill and a shadier corner?
Essentially, yeah, a microclimate is just a small area where the conditions, temperature, humidity, light, differ from the general surroundings.
Yeah.
So one jar might be on a sunny, warm windowsill, getting lots of light. Another might be in a cooler, shadier spot. Maybe one near a vent with more air circulation. All these little variations can impact how well the cuttings root and grow.
So Aang was really running a proper little experiment there.
Absolutely, trying to pinpoint the optimal conditions for their specific setup.
So thinking about Aang's whole process, what are the main takeaways here for, the rest of us trying this stuff at home?
First, I'd say really look at your plants. Observe them. The size, the leaves, it can tell you things about its potential variety or how it was grown. Don't just assume all mint is the same.
Good point. Pay attention.
Second, don't be too rigid about the rules. While guidelines are helpful, Ang's experiment shows there's room for nuance. Minimal pruning worked here, maybe even that tiny bit of fertilizer. It depends on the specific situation.
Right. Context matters.
And finally, the value of experimentation. Ang didn't just guess. They tested different environments. That hands-on observation is key to figuring out what works best for you in your space.
Yeah, tailoring it to your own conditions, that microclimate idea is pretty powerful.
Exactly. What works perfectly in one person's kitchen might struggle in another's.
So, wrapping up, Aang's curiosity, sparked by those big mint leaves, led down a really useful path. We saw how plant condition, propagation choices, and environment all play a role.
It really did. Which leads to a final thought for you listening. Ang explored microclimates for mint. What subtle, maybe unexpected environmental factors might be influencing your plants right now? Perhaps it's time for a little experiment of your own.